Hi, my name is Rich Madden with the Maritime Safety Innovation Lab, and we're here today with a cargo safety alert. This comes out of Ningbo, China, where the YM Mobility, a medium-sized container ship, was involved in cargo operations and had a fire and massive explosion on board. First thing we're going to do is take a look at a video that comes out of Chinese national TV, CCTV. Fire is active on board, and then we get this massive explosion with pieces of container and cargo flying towards the camera. And then as we pull back to another shot, we see the containers actually flying through the air as the fireball is twice the height of the container cranes around it. Now, the shock waves were felt a long distance away, and keep that in mind when we start talking about this other incident in Jebel Ali. We understand there were no injuries on the ship or in the port, which is fortunate given the size of this explosion and this disaster and how far that debris went. Now, the ship was supposedly carrying hazardous materials, or IMDG cargo. IMDG stands for International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, and regulates the carriage of hazardous cargo. Now, MarineLink.com, a US-based maritime news organization, has this article up about the incident in Ningbo, China with the YM Mobility. It talks about the hazmat that's on board, or was reported to be on board, to include lithium batteries and tert-butyl peroxybenzoate. Now, tert-butyl peroxybenzoate is actually UN 3103 and is a class 5.2. A class 5.2 is an organic peroxide. Now, organic peroxides are a particularly hazardous type of dangerous goods to carry on ships because they are liable to exothermic decomposition. Now, exothermic means that they give off heat, and decomposition means they start coming apart. They start breaking down into the different components. And one of the things about organic peroxides is they have oxygen in their chemical makeup, which means when you have a fire, it already has one of the things it needs to burn with it. So, organic peroxides, liable to exothermic decomposition, and sometimes explosive exothermic decomposition. In fact, some class 5.2 are required to be carried or recommended to be carried in reefer containers. A reefer container is a refrigerated container. It can be either chill or freeze, but it is a controlled temperature. Now, this particular material safety data sheet isn't for the particular cargo that was on board the YM Mobility, but it's indicative of some of the characteristics of this tert-butyl peroxybenzoate, or organic peroxide. As we look through the material safety data sheet, it gives us a lot of information on what this stuff is. When we get down to physical and chemical properties, it talks about organic peroxides are thermally unstable substances or mixtures which can undergo exothermic self-accelerating decomposition. And then as we scroll down a little bit further, we see that the self-accelerating decomposition temperature for this class 5.2 is 60 degrees Celsius. Now, that's interesting because in Ningbo on August 9th, the temperature was about 38 degrees Celsius. Now, the question is, how long had this product sitting inside a metal box been sitting in the sun, potentially heating up? As we continue to scroll down, we see a lot more information in here. We talk about the human health, the environment, risk management, storage and handling. Avoid temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius and temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius for prevention of fire an explosion. Storage buildings must be built and equipped so as to not to exceed the maximum prescribed temperature limit. Now, this is a particularly interesting piece of information because the other incident that we're going to talk about in Jebel Ali occurred in July of 2021. Now, July in the United Arab Emirates, it's pretty hot. And these particular containers of class 5.2 had been sitting in the terminal for an extended period of time. And like we said, the cargo is sitting in a metal box, potentially heating up all the time. So the situation in Jebel Ali was with a ship called the Ocean Trader. And the Ocean Trader was a smaller container ship. It was more what we call a feeder ship, but it was loading at the terminal there and underwent a fire and explosion on board. It took about 2.5 hours for the fire to be brought under control, but as we look at this video, we see the debris that was spread around. And we also see a video here of the fireball as seen from the city of Dubai, which is a number of miles away. And again, there were no casualties reported from the ship or in the terminal. We see the aftermath here with the pieces of containers and containers spread over a pretty large area of the pier. Now, one of the things that came out of this incident in Jebel Ali was a court case against the captain of the ship as well as a number of crew members, and they were eventually found liable for not caring for the cargo. Even though this cargo had just been loaded on board, they were considered to have failed in their care of the cargo. So how does this come back to the cargo safety alert? Well, here we have examples of potentially, we don't really know about the YM mobility yet, but potentially 2 incidents where IMDG Class 5.2 were stored in a terminal, loaded on a ship, and had a fire and an explosion. Why? Well, again, summer. These are cargoes that were carried in either regular containers, or there is information coming out of Ningbo that cargo may have been in a reefer container that was not being used as a reefer container. It was being used as a dry container. So what does that mean for us as seafarers? It means that when we go into a terminal and we find out that we're going to be loading or carrying a class 5.2 organic peroxide, one of the things we might want to ask, or one of the things we should ask, is how long has that container of class 5.2 been sitting in the terminal? What is the ambient temperature, and what are the conditions of that cargo? This is Rich Madden with the Maritime Safety Innovation Lab. Let's be safe out there and keep some of these lessons learned by others in mind so that we don't have to make them ourselves.